The keys felt heavy in my hand as I looked around the empty space that was finally all mine. This was my apartment in Boston's North End, and honestly, I couldn't stop smiling. After so many years of teaching and saving every penny I could, Ashley Blake finally owned something real. Look, it wasn't some fancy penthouse or anything like that, but that didn't matter to me one bit. What mattered was that I'd worked my butt off to get here while everyone else in my family was doing their own thing. My younger sister, she bounced from one guy to the next, always looking for someone to take care of her. Mom and Dad called it being free-spirited, which was their nice way of saying she never had to deal with real consequences for anything. Yeah, that stung pretty bad sometimes, the way they treated her versus how they treated me. But whatever, I tried not to think about it too much. I just ran my fingers along the kitchen counter and thought about how this place was mine, nobody else's. So I figured why not throw a little party to celebrate. I invited some friends from work and my teaching days. Sent invites to Mom and my sister too, though deep down I already knew they probably wouldn't show up. When my friends arrived, they brought wine and plants and all kinds of nice stuff. The place filled up with their laughter and good energy. Somebody lifted their glass and made a toast about how hard I'd worked for this moment. That felt really good, I'm not going to lie. But there was also this weird emptiness, because family always seemed to pick each other over me. That night while everyone was having fun, I had no clue what was about to hit me. Drama was heading my way fast, the kind that would end with my own father putting his hands on me during my birthday party. And then about a month after that, Mom would call me crying and full of regret. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. If you've ever dealt with crazy family drama like this, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that really hit you in the gut. About 4 weeks went by after the housewarming party. It was a quiet Friday afternoon, and I wasn't expecting anybody. I'd just finished grading a massive pile of papers and was still wearing my comfortable home clothes. The doorbell rang, which was weird because I hadn't invited anyone over. When I pulled the door open, my stomach just dropped. Mom stood there with my younger sister Kelly, and I could tell immediately from their faces that something was up. Before I could even say hello, Mom pushed right past me into the apartment. Her handbag swung around as she started looking at everything in my living room, like she was some kind of inspector. Kelly came in behind her, wearing sunglasses inside the apartment, which was her way of avoiding actually looking at me. I closed the door real slow, trying to figure out what was happening. Mom had already made her way to my kitchen and started opening my cabinets, like she owned the place. "Ashley, you haven't prepared anything to eat," she said in that tone that always made me feel about 2 feet tall. "It's past 6 already." I explained that I didn't know they were coming, and maybe they should have called first. She just waved her hand at me, which was her classic move for ignoring any boundaries I tried to set. Meanwhile, Kelly finally took off those stupid sunglasses and sat down at my table. She had this particular look on her face, the one that meant she wanted something from me. The conversation took a turn pretty quick. Kelly started talking about how she'd broken up with Derek Miller. "He expected me to cover rent after all those months together," she said with this dramatic sigh. Ridiculous. Then came the part one should have seen coming. She wanted to move in here temporarily, just until she got back on her feet. According to her, the North End was perfect for finding jobs and making connections. I tried to say that I really needed my space in this new home, but Mom jumped in immediately with that sharp voice of hers. "Don't be so self-centered," Mom said. "Your sister has nowhere else, no savings, and you're here all alone in this nice spot." They worked together to corner me. Kelly started crying and dabbing at her eyes, promising she'd look for jobs right away. Mom brought up all this stuff about family loyalty and how we'd always supported each other during tough times when we were growing up. That hit me hard because I remember Dad always teaching us about sticking together, even though he clearly played favorites with Kelly. I felt all my resistance just crumble under the pressure they were putting on me. "Fine," I said finally, but only for a short while. Kelly's face lit up immediately, and those tears disappeared like magic. She hugged me, but it felt stiff and fake, so I didn't really hug her back. That evening, Kelly started unpacking her stuff in the guest room. I made a simple dinner and laid out some ground rules while we ate. No being loud, especially since I had to wake up early for school. We'd split all the household tasks evenly, things like cleaning and cooking. And she needed to turn off lights and appliances because I didn't want my utility bills going crazy like they did at our family home. The most important rule was no visitors without asking me first. This was my place, and I needed to control who came through that door. Kelly nodded while she chewed her food. I get it, Ashley, she said. I'm not a kid anymore. I'll prove I can handle this responsibly. Her words actually sounded genuine for once, more sincere than I'd heard from her in years. For just a second, I let myself hope that maybe she'd actually changed and would turn things around. But underneath that hope, there was this nagging worry in the back of my mind. I'd watched this same pattern play out before, where her promises would fade into excuses. As I cleaned up the table by myself that night while she sat there scrolling through her phone, I wondered if I'd just made a huge mistake. The apartment already felt like it was a little less mine than it had been that morning. The first week actually surprised me in a good way. Some mornings Kelly would wake up early and make coffee, even cook simple stuff like eggs and toast. She'd talk about job applications she was sending out and mentioned having a few interviews lined up at cafes and retail stores in the area. The apartment stayed pretty clean without me having to ask. Counters got wiped down, floors were swept. Coming home from teaching to find a warm meal waiting was actually kind of refreshing. It reminded me of my sister from way back in childhood, before everything went sideways with her life choices. She'd even ask about my day, and we'd share laughs about funny things that happened with my students. I started thinking that maybe, just maybe, this whole arrangement could actually work out. But then the third week rolled around, and things started falling apart. I came home one day to find a pile of dishes in the sink, all crusty and gross because nobody had rinsed them. Kelly stopped cooking completely, saying she was too exhausted from job hunting all day. Instead, she'd just lay on the couch staring at her phone while the living room got covered with her trash, wrappers, and cups everywhere. One evening, I'd had this really draining parent-teacher conference, and when I walked in, Kelly was in the exact same position I'd left her in that morning. Takeout containers were all over the coffee table. I tried to hold back my frustration and just started making dinner myself. But when the smell brought her into the kitchen, I couldn't keep quiet anymore. We needed to talk about those chores we'd discussed. Things got worse at night. Kelly would be on the phone late into the evening, her laughter echoing through the thin walls, music blasting from her device. The neighbors, who were used to normal street noise in the North End but not this indoor chaos, knocked on my door once to complain about how loud it was. The next day I heard Kelly complaining about having a headache from wherever she'd been the night before. She started going out more and more, coming back after midnight, sometimes stumbling around. I could smell smoke and alcohol on her clothes. I couldn't sleep anymore because the noise kept waking me up before my early classes. First, I confronted her about the utility bill. It had jumped way higher than what I'd carefully planned for in my budget. She was taking these long showers with the water running forever. She'd crank the air conditioning even on days that weren't that hot. All of it was adding up fast. I showed her the statement one morning while we were having coffee, pointing at the spikes in usage. Kelly just shrugged like it was nothing. It's been humid lately, Ashley, and job searching is stressful, she said. I need to unwind. Her excuses were so hollow, and she didn't offer to help pay for any of it or even try to use less. The tension kept building while I tried to focus on my own routines just to keep some sense of normalcy in my life. The real punch to the gut came one afternoon when I was organizing my desk drawer where I kept lesson plans. I noticed that some cash was missing, a few $100s I'd stashed away for emergencies. Panic hit me first, then suspicion, especially after I'd noticed Kelly wearing new clothes and accessories recently. I waited until she finally came out of her room at noon, still in her pajamas, and asked her directly about it. Her face went pale before she started denying everything. I wouldn't do that, she insisted, but her eyes were looking everywhere except at me. I kept pressing, and eventually she broke down. She admitted she'd borrowed the money for interview outfits and promised she'd pay me back soon. Anger just boiled up inside me. This wasn't just her being messy or lazy anymore. She'd crossed a serious line. As she went back to her room, I stood there frozen, feeling like my apartment had been tainted by what she'd done. About a month into this nightmare, I got yanked out of deep sleep by the sound of keys jangling and people giggling. I looked at the clock. 5:20 in the morning. Kelly was coming home late again, but this time I could hear multiple voices in the hallway. I threw on a robe and walked out, rubbing my eyes. What I saw just stopped me cold. Kelly was leaning against the wall, barely able to stand up straight. Her makeup was smudged all over her face, and her arm was linked with some guy I'd never seen before. He was tall, wearing a jacket that made no sense for the warm weather we were having in Massachusetts. He had this smug look on his face as he nuzzled Kelly's neck right there in my hallway. Kelly spotted me and grinned real wide. "Hey sis, this is Ryan Foster," she slurred. "Isn't he great? His place fell through, so he's crashing here with me." Ryan barely even looked at me, just kept his hands all over her right there in the open in my home. I felt sick to my stomach. I demanded to know why she hadn't asked me first about bringing someone here. Kelly waved it off like it was nothing. "It's no big deal," she said casually. "You said no guests without notice, but this is different. He's with me." Something snapped inside me. My voice came out steady, even though I was furious. This violated everything we talked about. Ryan finally spoke up, and his tone was so arrogant it made me want to scream. "Your sister said it would be fine," he said. "Relax." Then they just went back to their little display as if I wasn't standing right there a few feet away. My face felt hot with anger and humiliation. I'd had enough. I ordered Ryan to get out immediately. Kelly's eyes got narrow and mean. "You're being ridiculous," she said. "He's staying." The argument escalated fast. Kelly started hurling insults at me, calling me jealous and controlling. I marched straight to her room and pulled out her suitcases from under the bed. "Pack now or leave empty-handed," I told her. She stormed after me, shoving clothes into the suitcases, all sloppy, while muttering under her breath. Ryan just stood in the doorway watching, silent but with this smirk on his face. It felt like forever as she zipped up the cases roughly, her knuckles white from gripping them so hard. Finally, she dragged them toward the exit and paused to spit one last accusation at me. "You're the worst sister ever." The door slammed behind them so hard it made the picture frames on my walls shake. Suddenly, everything was silent, heavy and abrupt. My hands were trembling as I locked the door, the adrenaline draining away and leaving me completely exhausted. I collapsed onto the couch while everything that just happened replayed in my mind, the intrusion and betrayal piling on top of everything else she'd done. I needed to talk to someone, so I called my cousin Brandon. He answered all groggy, but he listened while I told him everything that had happened. "You did the right thing," he said in this calm voice. "Boundaries matter, especially in your own space." Talking to him helped ease that tight knot in my chest a little. It reminded me that I had people who actually understood and supported me. As the first light started coming through the windows, I realized something important. I felt lighter. No more making excuses for her. No more chaos. The apartment felt like it could be mine again. About 50 minutes later, my phone rang. Dad's name was flashing on the screen. I answered hesitantly, and his voice just exploded through the speaker. "How could you throw your sister out in the dead of night?" he shrieked. "She could have been in danger." His anger was so intense I could feel it through the phone. I stayed quiet at first, but he just kept going, calling me selfish for not helping family, heartless for turning my back on Kelly. "After all we've done for you," he added, and his tone was dripping with disappointment. I tried to defend myself, bringing up all the repeated issues, how she didn't contribute anything, the theft, the uninvited guest. But he dismissed everything as exaggeration. "You're overreacting," he said. "She's your sister." The conversation ended with him slamming the phone down. That click echoed in my ear. His words stuck with me, creating this mix of guilt and resentment that made me question whether I'd been too harsh. I powered off my phone immediately because the silence was a relief after that verbal assault. Over the next few days, I threw myself into deep cleaning to get rid of every trace of Kelly's stay. The kitchen was harboring moldy dishes hidden in the cabinets, and the smell hit me hard when I found them. There were stains all over the floors and walls from spills she never bothered to clean up. I spent hours scrubbing with heavy-duty cleaners. The guest room was even worse. I found food wrappers shoved under the bed, sticky spots on the nightstand, even a wine stain on the mattress. I hauled out multiple garbage bags, and the physical work matched the emotional purging I was going through. By the end, my arms were aching, but the space was starting to feel like mine again. I reorganized every drawer, wiped down all the appliances, and opened all the windows to get rid of the lingering smells. The whole process was actually therapeutic. Each corner I cleaned restored a little bit more of my peace. Next up was calling a locksmith. He showed up the following afternoon, efficient and professional. "Better safe," he said as he installed the new lock and handed me the shiny keys. Their weight in my hand brought this rush of freedom, like a symbol that I'd reclaimed my autonomy. No more surprise entries, no more violations of my sanctuary. But mixed in with that empowerment was this deep hurt from what Dad had said. His bias toward Kelly had always been there, but that outburst really highlighted how little he valued my side of things. It left me questioning our whole family dynamic and the uneven expectations that were always placed on me. Why was I always the one who had to compromise? That question kept looping in my head as I tested the new lock. My birthday was coming up soon, and I decided to celebrate it in my newly cleansed home. I wanted to keep it small, only inviting people who actually had my back. I sent texts to Natalie, who was known for bringing homemade treats to things. Angela was my go-to person for moral support during tough weeks. Linda and Diane were both reliable and gave honest feedback when I needed it. I added Brandon since he'd offered such solid advice lately. His perspective always helped balance things out. I very pointedly left out Mom, Dad, and Kelly. Having them there would just bring tension. And this was my chance for a drama-free celebration. Leaving them out felt final, like a real step toward healing, though it also tugged at me with this sense of loss. Getting ready for the party occupied my mind. I picked out easy appetizers and put together a playlist of soothing music. As confirmations rolled in from my friends, I felt this spark of excitement building. This event would validate my decisions and surround me with genuine care. Still, the family's dismissal lingered like a shadow, stirring up sadness during quiet moments. The contrast between their absence and my friends' enthusiasm underscored the pain, but also why my boundaries were so necessary. I spent time thinking about what the day would bring. Laughter, maybe some gifts, but most importantly, a sense of belonging without the weight of all those past grievances. As I arranged the seating and lighting, I let myself look forward to it. The hurt was fading a little in the anticipation. The party started off without any problems. Natalie showed up with her famous chocolate cake, and the rich smell filled the apartment as she set it on the table. Angela gave me a bottle of red wine she'd picked out from the shop she loved nearby. Diane brought a sturdy houseplant with bright leaves that looked healthy and promising. Linda had put together a cheese assortment that was perfect for snacking. Brandon arrived with a small gift bag and this warm smile as he joined the group. We all gathered in the living room. Conversations flowed easily, with jokes about mishaps I'd had with students and updates on everyone's lives. The sound of glasses clinking mixed with genuine laughter. It felt really good to be surrounded by this circle of support, such a contrast to the isolation I'd been feeling lately. Then the doorbell buzzed aggressively, cutting through all the cheer. My stomach twisted because I knew that insistent ring. When I opened the door, there was Dad with his face twisted in rage. He shoved right past me into the apartment, not even bothering with hellos, and planted himself in the middle of my guests. He raised his voice immediately. "How can you all be here toasting her when she kicked her own sister to the curb like trash?" The room went completely silent. My friends shifted uncomfortably as he turned his glare on me. "We need to talk about what you've done, Ashley," he said. "Your poor sister is devastated because of your cruelty." I tried to keep my tone even, though my pulse was racing. "Dad, this is my birthday," I said.
"Now isn't the time."
Kelly abused my hospitality and ignored every boundary. But he wasn't listening at all. His volume just climbed higher, accusing me of being selfish and tearing the family apart. "After everything, you turn your back," he yelled. "You're heartless." My guests were murmuring now, some of them standing up like they were thinking about intervening. The tension hit its peak when I stood firm and refused to back down. In a surge of fury, Dad lunged forward and pushed me roughly. The force sent me stumbling backward into the wall. My cheek throbbed from the impact, and this humiliation just spread through me. "Ungrateful child," he snarled with these cold eyes. Then he spun around and marched out, the door crashing shut with a finality that shook the pictures on the walls. A stunned quiet fell over the space. I just stood there, unable to move, my hand rising to my face as hot tears started escaping. The celebration was completely shattered in under 11 minutes. Brandon moved first, pulling me into a steady hug as sobs racked through me. "It's okay," he whispered. "Let it out." Natalie and Angela came over and wrapped their arms around us in solidarity. Diane grabbed tissues and started dabbing gently at my face, while Linda murmured reassurances. "He had no right," she said firmly. Their kindness anchored me in the middle of that wreckage, but the sting of what Dad had done lingered. It was a raw wound exposing years of uneven treatment. As they helped gather up the scattered plates and glasses, I drew strength from their presence. I made a vow to myself to process this betrayal later when I had the emotional energy for it. A month went by. Brandon called me with updates he'd heard through family channels. Apparently, Kelly and Ryan had moved into Mom's house. What started as a temporary solution spiraled out of control really quickly. They started hosting these gatherings that stretched into the early morning hours, with music blaring loud enough that neighbors started complaining. One incident got so bad that police showed up after someone reported a disturbance. The noise had rattled the whole quiet suburb. Mom tried to step in once, but Kelly shoved her aside during an argument, which left Mom bruised and shaken. The chaos didn't stop there either. Bills were piling up from their crazy use of utilities, and the home turned into this disaster zone of empty bottles and trash everywhere. One afternoon, Mom's number lit up my screen. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. Her voice cracked on the line, softer than I'd ever heard it before. "Ashley, please don't hang up," she said. "I need to talk." She paused, and I could hear her breath shaking. "You were right about everything," she continued. "Kelly and that man have overtaken the place. They don't lift a finger, just create mess after mess." Tears were choking her words as she described the parties that were disrupting the whole neighborhood and the shove that had left her reeling. "When I confronted them last week, she pushed me down," Mom said. "I don't know what to do anymore. Help me, please." I listened quietly while memories of Dad's outburst and years of favoritism flooded back. Her admission felt like it came too late, and it was laced with desperation rather than genuine understanding. "Mom, you chose this path," I said, always defending her, making excuses while I bore the brunt of everything. She begged again, her voice breaking even more, but this resolve hardened inside me. "You need to handle this yourself," I told her. "Your favorite daughter is your responsibility now." I ended the call firmly and then blocked her number. No more intrusions, no more guilt trips. The decision brought this finality that settled over me like calm after a storm. Word kept filtering through Brandon about what happened after that. Mom started pursuing an eviction lawsuit against Kelly and Ryan. The whole process dragged on with court dates and legal fees that were draining her savings. Testimonies from neighbors about the disturbances strengthened her case. But the stress was wearing her down with sleepless nights and mounting costs from lawyers and repairs. Kelly and Ryan were facing potential homelessness if the ruling went against them. Their whole lifestyle was unsustainable without enablers. Meanwhile, my days had returned to normal. Mornings with uninterrupted coffee, evenings grading papers in peace and quiet. My bills stabilized without all that excess usage. The apartment breathed easy again. Dishes stayed clean, lights got switched off properly. I slept fully through each night with no echoes of arguments or late arrivals waking me up. Reflecting on everything taught me some vital lessons. Setting boundaries protects your well-being, even when it comes to family. Favoritism breeds resentment and enables poor behavior that leads to inevitable fallout. I didn't carry the weight of their choices anymore. Peace came from that release. Life moved forward on my own terms.